It being on or about 6:30, I'm going to open this meeting of the Easton Conservation Commission, June 23rd, 2021. Please note, in keeping with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by the board commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. This meeting is being recorded, both audio and video, so please note that. Please note that applicants will be given the ability to assume remote control of their hearings, or we can present materials for them if they prefer. Please note the signature authority will actually vote on tonight, but our intention is that Andrea Langhauser or her successor will be responsible for signing all decisions on behalf of the commission. Also, please note that
this meeting is being recorded.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Please note that in order to maintain efficiency during these remote meetings, my intention is to limit each hearing to 15 minutes unless I authorize additional time. After 15 minutes, I'll determine if further discussion is required or all the topics have been sufficiently covered. The applicants, commissioners, and any public contributing comments are asked to remain focused and concise in their presentations and discussions. Commissioners are expected to have reviewed permit materials prior to the hearing to contribute to maintaining an efficient discussion. Additionally, after the applicant's presentation, the chair will request the agent provide a brief summary of the staff report so the commission is aware of the issues identified by the agent and help focus the discussion. Also, as a reminder, any materials the commissioner, applicant, or member of the public presents in the public hearing that is not already part of the permit record should be provided by email to the principal clerk and agent following the meeting so it can be retained as part of the public record. First off, we're just going to have a roll call to establish quorum and identify members of the commission. So Rory Caulfell's here.
Carol here.
Mike Spady here.
Okay, so we have a quorum, so we will proceed. Please note, I am going to take one item out of order after the first two hearings. I'm going to push up the certificate of compliance for 10 Electric Ave, but we'll do the first two public hearings and then we'll take that one. So I'm just putting that out there for people who are attending. First up is 215 Washington Street. This is a request for determination of applicability, construction of a gravel access drive connecting existing barn work area and agricultural field. Hi, Kevin. You're on mute, and Frank's on mute.
Sorry. How are you folks doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Our project here is tied in with the construction of a new farm stand and also a washing and packing house for vegetables and a commercial kitchen with a little patio off the south side of the building going towards the agricultural fields. And we would like to sort of change the orientation of how the public interacts around the space there. Currently, we have our drive access road runs right through the area. Oh, thank you, Rory. Runs right through the area where the public convenes and waits for hay rides out to the pick your own fields. In what we call basically the picnic lawn. So we would like to reorient the traffic flow, most of which comes from the barn and the packing area there, along with the tractors and other heavy equipment. We want to divert it away from where the public will be gathering to this and move it to the south. And have it more directly flow from the barn right out to a road that is currently exists in the woodlot there, and which will then take us to the ag fields. So you can see that the gravel road will come basically it will stay outside of the 50-foot wetland buffer, but come very close to it.
So just as a reminder to the commission and the public that this is a further continuation of the ANRAD that we issued, the ORAD that we issued a couple weeks ago, related to the establishment of the wetland lines. So these wetland lines were confirmed through the ORAD a few weeks ago, and at the time we knew that there was a proposed gravel drive that was going to go in here. Anything else you want to add, Frank? Frank, you're on mute.
Yes, we have proposed some crushed stone trenches along both sides of the drive. This will intercept any surface runoff, recharge it into the soils. It will also prevent any erosion from the gravel drive flowing into the wetlands, for purifying water there. The gravel drive will connect an existing gravel parking area around the barn to the existing roadway, as Kevin has already stated. The slopes going to it are relatively minimal. They're less than 3 to 1. We are proposing that during construction, a filter mitt sock be placed between the limit of work and the wetlands. And upon completion of construction, we are proposing that 4 permanent wetland markers be installed along the 50-foot buffer zone.
Okay, great. And there's some detail on the second page here, just for everyone, for the silt sock and the as well as the gravel drive and the stone catch basins on each side of the permanent markers also there as well. So the details provide that. Any questions from the commission? Well, actually, before I do that, anything else, Frank or Kevin?
I don't have anything else, no.
Andrea, anything?
Only to say that the abutters have been notified on this and the other hearings that are starting tonight. And the project has been designed to address the usual issues. So my recommendation would be a negative determination.
Okay, any questions from the commission?
I have no questions.
Any public comment on 215 Washington Street? Raise your hand, put something in the Q&A. Okay, so seeing none, I assume we want to close, Frank?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability on for 215 Washington Street.
Second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Beatty, aye.
Very good.
Great, thanks very much, folks.
Thank you.
Kevin, thanks.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Next up is 76 Blackbrook Road.
I'm going to promote Ms. Vazell, I believe is the panelist here. Tried to promote her, try again.
You want me to try?
No, I got it. This time. Well, there. This is a landowner representing themselves.
So are we having trouble promoting them, or they're not here, or?
I've twice, Rose, I'm asking you to rejoin as a panelist. I don't think you have to do anything. You just need to accept that.
Okay, so there is Rose. So Rose, you can turn on your video and you take yourself off mute. So this is this is a hearing for 76 Blackbrook Road. This is a notice of intent for construction of an above-ground pool and fence. Butters have been notified.
Yes. So the way you unmute, Ms. Vazel, is you should see a panel of tools at the bottom of your screen. To the left, it's mute or unmute. You want to click on that to unmute. Are you at a computer that has a camera? If so, you want to start your camera. Okay. Rory, I've been to the site if you'd like me to do the presentation.
Okay.
This is a project on 76 Blackbrook. He recognized as a residential development. There's a large seasonal pool behind the property with a fringe wetland associated with it. The water is still standing this time of year. It is likely, it has the physical characteristics of a vernal pool that hasn't been mapped or verified yet. There was in 2016 a septic system upgrade and a certificate of compliance was issued in the following year. The septic system you can see on this plan is as far from the wetland as it could be. Since then, the new owners have taken the property over and are using the septic plan as the baseline. There is existing a fence line along the back perimeter lot, around the lawn area. So if you can see the shed in the sort of top right-hand corner, that is outside of the fence line. And I'm gonna put that right there. That's there, right there. I was doing the same thing, right? That's outside the fence line, and the fence line, it doesn't extend anywhere near the property line because it doesn't extend into this woodland area. And on the site, I met the landowners, and we spoke of a landscape debris pile that's located adjacent to the wetland area, which they were going to move to the shed area. That might have been done in the few days since I've been there. And the pool is an above ground 24 foot diameter pool. And I asked them, they're not asking for any kind of decking around it. I did ask them to put a 2 foot wide gravel splash guard around it. We spoke of how the dry well would be constructed, and I identified that it was likely that there would be a condition to ensure that there was no discharge into the wetland area. This does require a waiver of your regulations, though. A potential vernal pool boundary is the edge of lawn area that existed in 2006. This house is old enough to assume that the present lawn is the existing lawn. That the present lawn was there in 2006. We discussed alternative locations. It can't go over the septic system, which would be farther away from the pool area, from the vernal pool area. It can't go in the front yard. it's relatively close to their deck area. You could move it a bit closer, but you know, there's a fence line there. The minimize the alternatives were where on the site could it be located. That's what we discussed. I don't know if they have other discussions about that. For avoid and minimize, we talked about the ways to mitigate the water through the gravel splash guard. And then the waiver is the public interest aspect of the waiver, advised to consider using sustainable lawn practices. We discussed what that meant, and I put the hyperlink in my staff conditions, and moving the lawn clippings, which you would have done in any case. If you wanted to go a step further, this would be a good opportunity to have the vernal pool certified and sort of have a professional wetland scientist go out and in the spring to evaluate and confirm the pool for natural heritage. So I can't add anything more to the waiver standard. I didn't see that one was written up in the application or posted to the application as I had hoped, since I talked to him last Tuesday. So that's all I can present on the proposed project.
So can you just clarify for me the fence? I didn't make it out to the property, but where is the fence line as it relates to the driveway?
It's at the, I'm gonna annotate it with a line. There's the porch and the driveway is here. Here's the driveway. The driveway goes up to a deck area and it goes right through there.
I'm not seeing your annotation. Are other people seeing it?
No, I'm not seeing it either. And Rose is in the comments and has said that she did in fact submit a waiver letter.
Okay, well, she should get it off mute and tell us about it.
Well, I'll promote her again, so.
I'm seeing the stars now.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Rose. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm so sorry. I'm not at home, so I had to download the Zoom on my phone. I apologize for not being at home to speak to you regarding my request for this above ground pool. And my husband's not able to attend the meeting today, so that's why I'm chiming in today. So if that's okay with you guys, I hope I'd be glad to try to help you answer any questions that you might have for me.
Yep, I'm actually just pulling up the waiver right now. So, the waiver criteria is really along the ways of no practicable alternative to the current project, and burden of proof is no impact on the wetland resource is on you, and also that there is a public interest to the project at hand. So I think that the alternative analysis, so I think that certainly we can't put it over the septic system. Is there a reason why it can't go closer to, further away from the potential vernal pool?
Are you asking me or are you asking Andrea?
Oh, it's your choice. So yes, I'm asking you.
I think it would be best for Andrea to try to answer that question for me if she can.
I think it looked to me like the you wanted to maintain a fire pit area that was closer to the decking. And so you're putting the pool away from this, and the fire pit is not it's not a structure in the ground. It's a, you know, it's a temporary structure. So it looked to me like I couldn't come up with a good answer from a wetland perspective as to why it's not closer to the pool. Why it's not closer to the fence line at the top of the pavement. I think this is preferred alternative.
If I can just make a comment about that. In the letter, my husband and I did say that if you have any suggestions, that we'll be glad to hear those suggestions. And in case based on your observation and Andrea's helping us in regarding this, if you want us to move it forward, we'll be glad to move it forward. We just don't know how forward you want us to move it without jeopardizing the current condition of the vernal pool and, you know, based on the town's rules. So if you guys want us to move it further towards the house, that's fine, or move it to a certain area where you feel that it's gonna be best put without, again, affecting any the vernal pool or any other conservation area, then I'm open to it. We're open to hear anything that you're suggesting.
So, Andrea, maybe you can, you know, and this is one of these where I'm a little bit at your mercy here. Is there a particular reason that we can't, that the pool wouldn't be better located here?
There is none. There is none. It is strictly from a land use perspective, the perimeter fence acts as the end of the active residential use. So other than that, so pervious this pool is above ground. It could certainly be moved away to where that X is. It could be moved closer to the driveway. I don't think it's a few feet.
So we're talking about, it's probably only, 10 or 15 feet moving it one way or another. So,
right.
Those are probably two alternatives, there. And I don't know if it makes a significant difference. I don't know that the 1X, the first X I put up is really any further away from the vernal pool than the other one. It's probably similar. So at least the high mean water of it. So I don't know that it makes a significant difference, but I am trying and follow through on the alternatives here and make sure that we're in agreement that, either it is where it is or not. So I think.
Can I make, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I'm seeing the X's where you're putting them. So the one that's closest to the driveway, it's literally where the first X, it looks, from what I can see from here, is that it's the one furthest away from my house. That's exactly where my fence is. The first X. The one closer to my house, the one closest to my deck is literally, that's like where my current deck is right now. So that's what I'm asking. So it looks from, I know it's really hard with the blueprint. And I spoke to the Board of Health myself. I called, I made sure, I said, because I wanted to make sure before I came forward with you guys, I wanted to make sure it wasn't too close to where the septic system, what do you call those things? I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with the system. For them to next to the septic system. So he told me where he gave me the feet away, how far I have to be. So again, the first X is literally, it looks like it's right on the line where my fence is, my current fence is right now. The second one would be just right at the end of my deck. Is that what you're suggesting?
Okay, could you just clarify for me, because I was at the site, Ms. Vazal, is the deck shown on the plan? The deck that exists there today?
Yes. So yes. So where the second X is, so you want me to put the pool right off the deck? Is that what you're saying?
Because the deck is inside the fence line, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It is. Yes.
Rose, I think we're just trying to figure out an appropriate place to put the pool to get as much distance between the wetland resource and the pool as possible.
Okay.
Without
Yeah,
issues.
Thank you, Ben. You are actually 100% clear here. I'm not actually suggesting, I'm asking, have those been considered? If there's a reason why they've been considered and therefore ruled out, like it's too close to the septic tanks, it's too close to the deck, you need a certain amount of offset. Those are reasons for us to sort of rule them out as alternatives and sort of accept it in its current position of, in its location and proximity to the vernal pool in the wetlands. So I think that's really the bare minimum conversation that we're trying to have, because that really isn't presented to us in any sort of formal way. So we're trying to work with you as the applicant to have that analysis right here in front of us.
Okay.
Rather than sort of, and you may have had conversations in the field with Andrea, and I think it's up to us to say, okay, well, what other things were sort of considered here on this particular plan. So I think that's what our intention is here. That's why I cleared the X's off there. I didn't want those to be fixated here. I sort of did that as sort of a holding place for us to say, okay, here's a couple of spots that are further away from the wetland resource. Could we put them there? I think we sort of found that maybe one's right up against the fence, and the other one's right up against the deck, so that probably isn't the greatest spots to have them. So I think we can probably, rather than move it 5 feet from where it is now, I think we probably say, okay, the alternative here we have here is the most practicable solution that we can have. And I think that that's what we're trying to get to. So let's sort of put that off to the side from that standpoint. I think anything else, Andrea, that before we get into any sort of discussion? I think you've covered everything. Okay. I think that from our standpoint, I think there's a couple of things here. Have you had any thoughts about a filter system and whether you're going to use a cartridge system or a sand filter? Because a sand filter requires you to backwash it, which means that water's got to go somewhere, and a filter system requires you just to take the filter out and clean it with a hose. So,
with the application that I sent again with the permit to Kevin, I submitted a copy of it's a backup filter system that the pool company told me that they recommend. So I just submitted again to Kevin's office. So I don't know if you guys received that.
Is Kevin the building inspector?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
I submitted it.
So we're the Conservation Commission, so we wouldn't have those records. So you would need to submit those records to us.
Okay, I can do that. I'm sorry. I thought I had to just only do it, send it to Kevin.
Well, the issue comes up to us, and the reason why is because we're trying to minimize the impact on the wetland resources. So we ask these type of questions because we want to make sure that the filter that's being recommended has the least impact on the environment, especially when you're this close to the vernal pool. So the best alternative is a filter cartridge system, a cartridge filter system. Secondarily, if you were further away, I might suggest a saltwater system that's less toxic.
Okay.
And the least desirable system would be a sand filter with chlorine. So, from our standpoint, we'd want to assure that we're using a cartridge filter system, and that there's no discharge into that prevents us from having an opportunity to have to backwash the filter and have any discharge of water into the wetlands.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, so I don't, without knowing what was submitted, I'm a little bit challenged here. So let's just sort of run down through what I think we need here, and we can decide how we want to proceed. So we can either condition it, but I don't know if the applicant's prepared to accept those conditions or not. We can either condition these things, or we can ask the applicant to return at the next hearing with an updated set of information. So, I think we have to have a cartridge filter system. We want to have the 2-foot gravel, drainage skirt around the pool to handle any splash, oversplash on the pool. 2 feet deep, 3/4 inch wash stone, just to hold the water that comes off the thing. I think we'll want to have from that standpoint, from a pool standpoint. The other thing is how level is this property? It looks pretty level, but it looks like you probably have to have some being done.
It's very level.
Okay, so probably minimal work done, and probably done with a Bobcat, no problem at all. So, so I'm not worried about any sort of there. We probably would insist on having a erosion control on the back part of your property to make sure that no dirt goes off into the wetlands. I think that from that standpoint, I think that's probably from a pool standpoint and construction standpoint. I think from a public interest standpoint, sustainable lawn practices at the very least. And I'd be looking to Ben or Mike about whether or not you think we also need to have something in addition to that related to certifying the vernal pool. So, Mike, Ben, comments?
I'm all about certifying the vernal pool. We should definitely do that. Let me think of any other comments. I don't think I have any at the moment, though. Ben?
What would be the process if we asked the applicant to certify the vernal pool?
So, Andrea, you want me to try, or you want? I will try. Well, this is Andrea's last meeting, so I will try. So there's two ways to do this. First of all, any member of the public can actually certify a vernal pool and submit the paperwork to do it. You have to be experienced and know what to look for. It isn't like you just submit the paperwork. There's a process involved. You have to have obligate species and other things, and you have to certify at certain depths. And there's no inbound or outbound water. It's a bunch of things about a certain. Or you can hire an environmental consultant to come in and do it. I don't know how much that costs. Do we have any sense? That's around $800 or $1,000. What would it cost, Andrew?
I think we just had it done over at it's that property at the end of Lincoln Street.
Chickadee? My neighbor?
Way.
Yeah, Doug.
3. What's it called? 233R, I think, or something like that. I think
that one, yeah.
$2,000 and it was done.
Okay. So it could cost the applicant up to $2,000 to do that.
So I don't know if that's something that I have to discuss with my husband. Again, he's not here with me. It seems that I'm really confused and lost at work, and because this is all new to me. So I guess that being said, that you're requesting for me to have someone come out and certify the vernal pool. At this time, it seems I'm just gonna have to, based on your decision right now, I'm going to have to either A, take back and not request the pool, the in-ground pool, or not, or proceed for the following year. So I just don't even know where do I go? Where I don't even know where I stand right
Sure. So first of all, just well, I'll try and walk you through a couple of those things to clarify at least some of it for you. So first of all, right now we're only having discussions. We actually haven't made a decision. And it's something that we're considering. The issue here is that you're asking to work within the buffer zone of a vernal pool, a potential vernal pool. And so because you're asking to work in that no disturb zone, you're required to get a waiver. And so that's where we're getting a little bit stuck here. And the discussion that we're having right now is whether or not to request you to certify that vernal pool. And I think that one of the things that we're talking about here is the cost to the homeowner and whether that's in balance with the project that you're trying to achieve. Okay, so if you have a $2,000 out-of-pocket cost to certify the vernal pool on a project that may be costing you, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000, that's a pretty hefty premium to have to pay on top of it. So I think that that's the thing that I struggle with. And so this is part of the discussion. I think Ben was asking that question to sort of understand how much of an effort it would take for an applicant to do this. I mean, if it was part of a bigger project where you're trying to build a house, $2,000 isn't, I'm not trying to minimize it, but it's not that big a increase over the cost of building a home. But it is a big increase over the cost of you trying to put in a pool, I assume, for the kids in your yard, in your family, to play in the backyard and whatnot. So we're trying to sort of balance that act. So we actually haven't made any decision here. We're simply having that conversation. The other part of this is that if we did issue a decision, the permit would actually be good for 3 years. So you wouldn't have to withdraw the permit or anything like that if you chose to do it next year instead of this year. And you would actually have that time period to do that. You would also have those 3 years to we would condition when we'd probably want you to certify the vernal pool next year, because it's too late in the year to do it now because the animals have already bred in that pool and left. So the cost wouldn't be incurred until next year. So I do want to sort of give you that perspective that a permit's good for 3 years. So if we did issue a permit with conditions, that we would that it'd be good for 3 years. So does that answer some of the question? I think it probably answers about 80% of the questions, at least, that you put forth. So
yeah, yes, sir. So so if moving forward, it is because I'm speaking for my property, where I reside right now. What you're asking me is, since the vernal pool also is abutting other people, like my neighbor behind me and the neighbor next to me, and maybe is that something that is it because you're asking me because I'm asking to put this pool in and I'm the closest one to it? That's what I'm drawing to the conclusion to in regarding that. And that if I do if you give me that, if you do give me, if you're requesting that I do it, the timeline for me to get it certified, the vernal pool, where do I stand with my other neighbors? Do I have to again go through the same process that I just did now to ask you guys and for my abutters that I'm going to try to get this pool, the vernal pool, certified? How does that affect me down the road?
So first, the only reason why that we would ask you to certify the vernal pool is because there's a public interest in doing so. And it's part of your waiver request to do this work within the buffer zone of the vernal pool. You have to have public interest. We wouldn't out of the blue ask you or your neighbors to certify this vernal pool. And the reason why it's being requested of you is because it is a significant public interest for us to know that potential vernal pool is an actual certifiable vernal pool, partly
Okay.
because it helps us, understand the conservation impacts of any development in that area as it is. So that's why you're being requested to do that. You would not have to ask your neighbors to certify that vernal pool. It's on your property. So you have the right to be able to go into that vernal pool and certify it. So there isn't another process. It's, if you hired somebody to do it, a consultant to do it, he would file all the paperwork for you. So that we would normally want you to do that as soon as possible. And normally that would be done in the next spring. The vernal pools, thus their name, vernal, it's spring. It's a springtime situation. So sometime in April usually is when they get certified. That's when there is the most activity. That's when the salamanders come out and lay their eggs and the frogs come out and lay their eggs. All the obligate species that are out there, the fairy shrimps and everything else that are some of the obligate species.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that information.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm just going to return back to the discussion in the commission here and whether or not we're comfortable asking the applicant to certify the vernal pool given the scope of this particular project.
I don't think we need to ask her to certify the vernal pool here. It's my position. It's an above ground pool. I don't think the project is of a scale that supports it. And I'm open to input of other commissioners.
Yep. Mike?
No, I agree. I don't believe we need to go forth with having her have a vernal pool certified.
The other argument about this, though, is she satisfying public interest by simply doing sustainable long-term system?
Can I offer an alternative given the board's position? You could put a condition that requires the applicant to allow access for the vernal pool to be certified. And that puts the burden on a volunteer, educated volunteer to do the work.
So I think that's an interesting compromise. That we did that with one other project recently. We actually haven't, because of COVID, we didn't get back out there to do that. It was actually 2 springs ago, last spring, not this past spring, but the one before it, that we were supposed to go out and do that, and because of COVID, we didn't. And then this year, still with COVID still happening, we didn't go out and do it again. So we have to put that on our list to go out and do that particular one too. There isn't a reason why we couldn't go out and do this one at the same time. And I think we could probably get somebody. I know a couple of people that are qualified enough to do this. That would take us out if we wanted to go out and do this ourselves. If you haven't done it, it's really quite an interesting process, to be honest. So I guess the one thing that we have open here is, are we comfortable just conditioning the filter and saying, well, the pool person recommended a filter. I don't know if it's the one that we're going to say recommends. To be quite honest, most of these above ground pools have a cartridge filter system in them. So I'd be a little surprised if they're doing anything else.
Yeah, it'd be too heavy duty.
Yeah, it's just not necessary to have a bigger, bigger filter than that.
I like the conditioning. I feel that's safe. Just like to your point, it should have that anyway.
So, Rose, are you willing to? So, the question that I would have to you is, are you comfortable with us specifying a certain type of filter for the pool in order to issue the permit, or would you prefer to, continue the hearing, discuss it with your pool guy, and then submit the details of the filter to us for our approval? Which I mean, we can condition it and issue the permit, and then you could start work on this summer, and then you don't have to wait any couple weeks to get there. So you decide.
Well, if you feel, and again, I apologize for not being more precise in giving the proper information that you needed for today's meeting. But if you want me to look into more thoroughly and provide you with more details about the filter, and you don't like it, then yes, I will be glad to accept your conditions, any recommendations for me to change the filter so your panel is satisfied with me following the town's regulations regarding not affecting the vernal pool that's on my property. I wouldn't want to, again, do something harmful to the environment, and then later down the road, it comes down that it was due to my pool. That's not something that I'm looking for. I want to have the pool so I can enjoy it with my family, but at the same time being compliant with your department. So I'll take any suggestions, any recommendations, anything regarding the filter, whatever you give me the conditions, I'll follow through. So I'm open to it.
So I guess the question that I'm asking is, are you willing to accept the condition that we want a cartridge filter system?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so even if your pool person recommended something else, you're willing to go back to him and say, nope, they told me I have to have a cartridge filter. I'll tell you, it's not going to be increased cost to you. It's an economical approach. I mean, it's just the way it is.
No, that's fine, sir. I will do whatever you require me to do so I don't affect the vernal pool. I will talk to the pool people and say, this is what they're telling me, and I want to follow the town rules. So again, I will accept if you give me the permit, give me the permit, and you're telling me that I have to do it the way you're asking me to do it, the specific way, I will be glad to follow what your recommendations regarding the filter system.
Okay, great. Anything else from the commission? I'll go to public comment.
Have we decided on a spot?
I think unless you have a suggestion of alternative to where it is.
No, okay. No, that's where it's gonna go. All right, that's fine. I really don't. I mean, it's pretty squeezed, but
I have no additional comment.
Public comment for 76 Blackbrook. If you could just raise your hand or put something in the Q&A or chat. Okay, so seeing none, I am gonna make a motion to close. Andrea, anything else we missed before I start this? You're on, okay. I'm gonna make a motion to close and issue a permit for work and order conditions, noting that the waiver requirements have been met. Noting the conditions, the applicant must use a filter cartridge system. There must be a 2-foot stone trench encircling the pool to deal with any water overflow. The 2-foot wide, 2-foot deep, 3/4 inch wash stone in the trench, and this is a part of the conditions and to meet the waiver requirements, sustainable lawn practices, and the applicant must allow permission for representatives of the Conservation Commission to enter their property to with notice to evaluate whether that vernal pool is certifiable for a period of up to 3 years.
Spady, second.
Roll call vote. Callfell's aye.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
Thank you for your patience, Rose. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, gentlemen, and Andrea, thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to take, thank you. We're going to take 10 Electric Ave. I'm just going to demote. Oh, somebody's already taken care of it. 10 Electric Ave. This is a certificate of compliance for a single-family home. Josh?
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. So we're here for a COC. Can I share my screen? Or you got it?
It's up to you.
You got it. It's pretty easy.
It is.
So yeah, we did this for South Shore Habitat in the town of Easton. The wetlands are off-site, and the 50-foot buffer zone is near the southwest corner of the lot. So they built this single-family house with the septic system out front. You can see the buffer zones, 100-foot buffer zone is just crossing through the house. A couple of changes from the original plan is the rock retaining wall to the north of the house and that small shed to the backyard. Those weren't on the original plan, but those are both small changes and they're outside the buffer zone. And everything else is, the site's stabilized. The erosion control was in most of the spots when I was out there. I know Andrea said it was taken out in some spots, but there's no issues with erosion. Grass is in for majority of the site. So everything pretty stabilized, and we're here for the COC.
Okay, Andrea, any comments? You're on mute. Sorry.
They're mowing the lawn next door. I didn't see my staff report in the binder, and I put the binder together. So, and I did do my staff report. So I don't recall there being any permanent conditions, perpetual conditions. And I spoke to the applicant about the need to reseed in an area where it was bare and there was a slope. But other than that, it's a straightforward project, is substantially compliant, as Josh said.
Any questions from the board? I have your staff report, Andrea. So
Yeah, okay.
it's.
Don't worry, I'm all set. I'm sorry.
What page is it?
What'd you say, Mike?
I said I'm all set. I have no questions.
Ben?
Nothing from me.
Any public comment? 10 Electric Avenue. Now raise your hand and put something in the Q&A box. Or the chat. Okay, so seeing none, I make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 10 Electric Avenue, noting the condition number 40 through 43, remove any debris in the wetland, should continue as a perpetual condition, and also that the applicant should reseed any areas that require it. That's it.
Spady second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Katie, aye.
Okay, 3-0. Josh, sorry you waited so long, but
No problem. Thanks, guys.
how's that baby doing?
Oh, she's doing great.
That's awesome. Good for you. Thanks.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Okay, next up is 314 Center Street. So butter notifications, do we have them on this?
Yes.
Do we have a DEP number yet?
No.
Okay.
And Stephen Clifford is the landowner and is making his own presentation. If you want to bring his plan up, he'll probably appreciate it.
Yeah,
Are you ready, Steve, to bring your own plan up?
Yeah, sure. I can bring my own plan up.
Oh, there you go.
so this is a notice of intent at 314 Center Street for construction of a retaining wall, stairs, and walkway. Just as a point of reference, that we issued a certificate of compliance on this property probably about a month ago. And obviously, I think Stephen is the new owner.
Can you see that?
I can see your desktop.
You can see my desktop.
There you go.
Okay, great. So this is the as-built with we're proposing the notice of intent to reconstruct a existing retaining wall in the southeast backside of the property here, which doesn't really exist anymore. And I'll take you over to the pictures from when we moved in late mid-March. This is what's existing as of now, and this is obviously back in March. So now it's even worse. We got a lot of runoff and erosion coming down this hill with every storm. Everything that comes off the roof, the driveway, the street, it's rolling down the driveway and just eroding this slope here, which, to be honest with you, we don't even know what's buried under this area here. We've been finding lots of broken concrete, rooftop, tar, shingles, all types of debris that keep kind of popping up as the soil washes out. So here are my stormwater pics. This was taken like just after we moved in, which was a good opportunity to get some stormwater runoff pictures. So you can see all the downspouts coming off the house and just landing on the driveway, which obviously pitches to this area and then washes right down to the slope and into the forsythia growth. As you can see, this runoff here and washout. Now, this is the street version that runs down Short Street. So I kind of followed the path of the runoff down the street. So this is from Center Street down to Short Street. And this is where it kind of empties out into, I believe it's like 80 Short Street. There's an inlet here that kind of empties into the perpetual stream. And basically, we're just going to be doing some minor small equipment, reconstruction of the wall, and moving into block and cap wall, where we have, this is just an image of what we're proposing, like an example of what we're proposing. So Belgrade block and cap with stairs within the wall, 4 by 25, so 4 feet tall by 20 feet long, and it's going to tie into the backside of the slope here as it kind of tapers behind the shed, with the buffer being here. So we're not crossing over the buffer line, but we're just kind of short of it. And then we're also proposing an invasive management plan to control the invasive species of bittersweet growing into the adjacent area and into the wetland area. And this is the invasive management plan that I'm proposing to deal with that. There'll be an autumn application with removal, cut and swab with glyphosate to minimize any kind of overspray runoff and native damage. So we're going to be very careful with that with a certified applicator to do the applications. I'll be doing the cutback, and then we'll be doing another probably application in the spring to manage this invasive species. So as you can see here, you can see all the bittersweet just in front of the blooming forsythia. That is actually inside the wetland border, which I don't entirely know if that's still considered wetland, because we know that forsythia in bloom is not a wetland plant. Also gonna be cleaning out whatever we can of construction debris that was left behind. So here you can see some bits of insulation that was left into the forsythia, and that's pretty much it. So we're just looking to reconstruct this wall so that we can kind of keep our driveway from caving in as this keeps eroding away, and actually try to, you know, bring up the public interest and the wetlands benefits of trying to retain all the native species and get rid of the invasive species. So some of wetland improvement, the benefit for the public interest is to increase the proper collection and conveyance of the stormwater runoff so that it's going to be collected from the house, from the roof, down the gutters, and it's going to tie in behind the wall to corrugate, you know, crushed stone into corrugated pipe, and it's going to funnel out to the wetlands as it should.
So just, I think you mentioned what kind of machinery do you expect to use on this?
small equipment, like a mini excavator, just to move the boulders around and get them out of there so that we can kind of bring that slope back so that we can rebuild that wall. And most of those boulders are going to be reused, basically around the front of the property where we have an existing natural stone wall, to kind of beef it up a little bit to protect the house on that intersection, especially during the winter. With you know, icy conditions, anybody could skid through that wall right now and end up right in the living room. So that's a bit of a scary situation that exists coming up this winter.
Totally understand. You proposing any erosion control here?
Yeah, we're gonna be using jute netting on top of the wall and down the back slope. And then once we're going to be doing some overseeding, some top dressing of loom and overseeding.
So during construction, you're going to use a silt sock or silt fence at all? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I read Andrea's recommendations on her staff report, and we're more than comfortable using, you know, the recommended silt socks, silt fence, and the hay socks, swaddles along the work area. So that's normal operating procedure. I just didn't add that in there, but the recommendation is completely, you know, doable on our end.
I'm just reading some notes on Andrea's thing here, so.
Sure.
So Andrea, any comments?
No, for those commissioners that were involved in the past decisions, this is a aggressive wetland boundary. Forsythia, as Mr. Clifford mentioned, is not a wetland plant. We accepted the line. It was done by a professional. I questioned it at the time, but I do think you should add a condition that we're not confirming the wetland boundary. Having walked out with the Forsythia in full bloom, I can tell you that there is a wetland inside of all that Forsythia. And the bittersweet removal will make a difference. So I think you have a buffer zone already in place between where the true wetland is. And the house, as you can tell, and you all know this property at the corner of Center and Short Street, the house is up against the street, but it's also up against the wetland line. So he's in the business of doing this type of work. You saw he had the invasive management certification. He knows what he's doing, and he's motivated because his family lives there. So I think he'll do a good job.
So I'm in favor of this project, and I believe that the applicant has met the burden of proof as well as the waiver requirements here. So I think this is a good project. I think that you know, with the proper, you know, erosion controls in place, and I think the public interest of enhancing that wetland by invasive species management certainly meets the public interest here. You know, I just, the one caution, and why I asked all the questions, is, you know, erosion control here. He's already talking about having problems with erosion. So I would want to get that erosion control in place as quickly as possible after this. So any other comments from Ben or Mike?
Nothing from me. I
Good
agree.
to go.
Yeah, a very well put together presentation by a homeowner applicant for sure. Any public comment on 314 Center Street before I get to some housekeeping on this? Raise your hand or Q&A or. Okay, so we can't close the hearing tonight because we don't have a DEP number. And so, but I think we've got everything in place to issue a permit and order of conditions at our next meeting, and we can put it early in the the agenda and take 5 minutes to do it. So I don't see any further comment coming up from my standpoint. So unfortunately, Mr. Clifford, we're going to have to continue. Okay.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into a situation where, you know, somehow DP wants some more information and you know, then we're sort of screwed. So.
Yeah, no, understood. So we'll continue this on the next meeting, hearing.
Yeah, the next meeting is July 12th.
Okay, great.
So make a motion to continue 314 Center Street to July 12th.
Speedy second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Speedy, aye.
Okay, we'll see you on the 12th then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Okay, next up is 87 Union Street, which is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, ANRAD, to determine wetland boundaries. And we have Mike Toohill representing the applicant Conoco. Blackledge LLC is the applicant. So.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. This is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for the wetlands delineated at 87 Union Street. Let me see if I can get my screen on for you.
Great.
Okay, you able to see that?
Let's see.
Yeah, but it's the wrong part of the plan.
Well, I'm going to zoom around.
Okay.
Yep, we can see it. Yep.
Good. Okay. I wanted to start here, Andrea, just to do an overview of where this site is. It's on Union Street, where Union Street turns into Pleasant Street, right on the Brockton Easton town line. Okay. And what I want to do now is kind of walk around the site. I'm going to start at the existing entrance. This site is all developed, by the way, and it's Benson Family and Benson Family Trust owns the site. And there's an existing drive entrance off Union Street right here. Across the street is French Pond. And so on the site at the drive entrance, we have the 100-foot buffer zone to French Pond, which is across the street. As we proceed all the way on the eastern side of the site, this is the Easton Brockton town line, runs right through the site right here. And there's a large overhead electric utility easement that runs along that eastern side of the site in Brockton, primarily. A little bit of it over here is in Easton. The wetlands on the eastern side of the site are in Brockton. We do have also an ANRAD before the Brockton Conservation Commission for the confirmation of these wetland lines. It's very convoluted here. There's a stream and wetland system. So we've got 4 lines here. We've got BBW, stream bank, BBW as you proceed across. So we have a stream flowing along here with BBW adjacent to it. And the BBW creeps out into the overhead power line easement on the eastern side. So in the town of Easton, we have the buffer zone to that BBW. We don't have any of this resource area, but we have buffer zone, and we have the buffer zone shown on the plan here. As we proceed to the southern end of the site, we have another small BBW right at the property boundary. So we've got a line of wetland flags here. The wetlands, by the way, were originally flagged by John Rockwell for a previous owner applicant. And then Conoco went out we started in 2020 and 2021, and we affirmed the wetland boundaries and made a couple of minor changes to the boundaries. So the boundaries that are shown here, I've been out and I've looked at all these boundaries. Lori McDonald's been out. I think Andrea's been out and has seen these boundaries as well. So these are currently flagged wetland boundaries. So we have a wetland that kind of loops at the back end of the site. And again, we have a 50-foot and 100-foot buffer zone off that wetland. That's the wetland that's in Easton. As we go to the western end of the site, it's not shown on the plan because it's actually off the plan. There's a stream back in the back in the woods on an adjacent property. And we took a few GPS shots with the property owner's permission. And so we were able to locate the 200-foot riverfront area, which is shown here. So it's a perennial stream. So we've got the 200-foot riverfront area of Dorchester Brook is shown on the plan. And adjacent to Dorchester Brook are some wetlands. And again, we went out and did GPSing of the wetland edge. We didn't hang flags back there because it's not on our property, but we GPSed the wetland edge. And so this buffer zone, 100-foot buffer zone, is the resulting offset from where the edge of the wetland is out there. So most of the site is completely high and dry outside of buffer zones, outside of resource areas, except as shown on this plan. And so we were asking the commission to affirm the boundaries of the resource areas. Obviously, you can't confirm the offsite boundary, but we're continuing to show, we will continue to show the buffer zones from those offsite resource areas. And it matches up fairly well with what's shown on Mass GIS as well. So the buffer zone really that we're asking you, we're asking you to affirm the resource area, excuse me, that we're asking you to affirm is basically this wetland that's on the southern end of the site, because again, the wetland that's off to the east is in Brockton, and the Brockton Conservation Commission will affirm that boundary. That's about it, Mr. Chairman. If you have any questions.
No questions from me. Ben or Mike?
Nothing from me.
None from me as well.
Andrea, any comments? You're on mute.
It's a straightforward project at this point. They did go out and pick up the perennial 200-foot buffer zone. So you'll be seeing the development itself after this ANRAD is approved, but the ANRAD information will help to inform the design of that.
I assume there's even a possibility we wouldn't see it because it could be outside our jurisdiction.
I think you'll say something.
Okay. So I have no questions. I see a raised hand in the attendees. Miss. So the question is, what is located at 87 Union now? So that's Benson Concrete Products. Is that what it is?
Correct. Correct. So most of you can see all the buildings that are on the site. You can see the disturbance. There's a lot of paved areas. There's utility poles here. There's utility poles along the back. This entire area is pretty well wide open, and it's a concrete storage products yard at this point, and then a number of big buildings on the site.
Right. Is it mostly impervious surface now?
There's a lot of it that's impervious. We have the edge of impervious shown on the plans here.
Yeah, it's.
So you can see, I mean, you can see how much of it coming in from the road, and everything is impervious.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very much.
And then this is all disturbed. All this area is disturbed.
Right. Ms. McManus, does that answer the question? Or do you have something else?
There's a second question. Was it used to manufacture?
Do you have any history on the site at all?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, we can certainly get that.
So
we're only asking for affirmation of boundaries.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm
Okay.
just trying to address it. So what is zoning? That's outside my jurisdiction. So there's nothing I can possibly say about what the zoning of this property is.
There will be as a matter of fact, check the local paper and the calendar. There is a zoning board of appeals hearing scheduled for later. Is it next week? Coming up for a comprehensive permit at this location. There'll be plenty of opportunity to talk about the site redevelopment through the zoning board of appeals comprehensive permit.
Okay, you're welcome, Ms. McManus. Okay, so seeing no other questions from the public, I assume you want us to close?
If you can, yes, certainly.
Sure. We can. We can do a
Move
lot of
on.
things. I am going to make a motion to close the hearing and issue an ORAD, Order of Resource Area Delineation for 87 Union Street, noting the following, the recommendations as noted in the staff report. Predominantly boundaries confirmed for BVWs flag G4 through G6, as well as associated buffer zones to the BVW G series, H series located in the project site in Brockton, the BVW offsite to the west of the Dorchester Brook and bank of French Pond. The boundary is confirmed for a portion of the locally regulated riverfront area associated with riverfront with Dorchester Brook. And that's it.
80 seconds.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Media eye.
Okay, so that's the end of that one. So on to the next project, which is yours, 560 Foundry Street. This is a continued hearing from 560 Foundry Street. Just as a sort of, I think we're going to be relatively brief tonight on this. Because I don't think there's a ton of new information that we can cover yet. My approach to this so far has been to try and address specific areas of the project one at a time, and try and sort of get us to get all the information from the applicant and get all of our questions answered, and then we'll try and sort of close those specific areas and move on to the next one, because I think there's a lot of discussion around each one of these areas, whether it be floodplain or wetland replication, or whether it be waivers, or whether it be wildlife habitat and whatnot. And I understand the peer review for the wildlife was issued, but we're not quite ready to discuss that. And there's still some discussion going on about the floodplain and some of the work around that, which we've been talking about. We could probably talk about it every time. I know it's a challenging site, so I actually am going to circle back on that a little bit after we talk about this. But I think this is a good opportunity. We had a great conversation, great information last time about the LSP report and the site conditions that were extensively examined by the applicant and the LSP. So, and I knew that there were some questions that came out of that, and I know the LSP presented us with some responses to that I think addressed the questions. And so I'll leave it up to you, Mike, what you want to do at this point. So what you want to review.
Yeah, I mean, if Andrea wants to speak towards the LSP questions, that's great. I do want to talk about floodplain for a minute after we're done with this particular subject.
Okay.
In my staff report, I did change the format of the way I normally do it to follow Rory's lead on trying to address each topic as a problem statement, how it gets resolved, and then any recommendations that come out of it. Since the last meeting, we did have the licensed site professional who had given a lot of some new information in a verbal format. He gave us a response to comments on 3 issues that I thought I hadn't recalled seeing in the written document. So he spoke to soil and groundwater samples taken in September of 2019 around the existing leaching system. He spoke of the PFAS samples that they took both in the groundwater and in surface water of Beaver Brook, both of which came back. They sampled for 2 of the 6 regulated compounds. Well, I don't know how many he sampled for, but 2 of the 6 regulated compounds were detected below Mass DEP's reportable concentration of 20, it's parts per billion. It's not milligrams per liter. It's
Micrograms.
micrograms per liter, thanks. And he did give what I thought was a valid response to the Woodward and Curran desktop review that was done a year and a half ago. I questioned whether or not it was valuable to talk back with Woodward and Curran. I did not think that it was, because it's been a year and a half since they've written the report. Site conditions have changed given the amount of soil that's come in. I thought it was a very legitimate response that they provided. And for us to get anything other than I have to stand by the words of my report at the time would cost us, the Conservation Commission, money to do a review, and I wasn't sure that we would get anything out of it. From my experience, this was a valid response from LSP. I don't think we need to go further into the topic. I think all the issues raised have had some response to them. That's the LSP discussion from my perspective.
You know, from my perspective, I thought the LSP addressed the questions that in a satisfactory manner from my perspective that were raised with some of the information that we needed clarification on. I thought the information was too direct and to the point on each one of these cases, and providing the PFAS information was instructive as well. I think that at this point, I think that the LSP has sufficiently demonstrated a reason why the Woodward and Curran information was not consistent with his own conclusions. I'm not quite sure that we need additional information from Woodward and Curran at this point. I'm satisfied with the site conditions as is. So I think that if there are any questions from the board. So no and no. You all set, Ben?
I'm all set. I agree.
Yeah, so do we feel like, from our standpoint, before I go to public comment on this, that we've gotten the information necessary for this portion of this? I know there's always going to be questions and disagreements about what the information means and what the impacts might be, but I think we have the information. Whether we, entirely agree with it or not is a different thing. But I think we have the information necessary, and I don't think I necessarily need any additional information from the LSP or the applicant on this particular area of question. So, anybody else? We good on this?
Agreed.
Okay. I know that there's a public comment on this. Rather than go through the thing, so I will promote Ms. McManus and let her speak for herself.
While she gets promoted, I just want you to know that Ms. McManus has sent in a series of public comments, and I post them to the online application, and so that the commission can see them, and I presented them to the Conoco team. So I appreciate that they were absorbed. I thought the comments were absorbed into the questions I asked of the LSP to respond to.
Okay, Ms. McManus, you can turn on your camera and take yourself off mute.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good. Can you just identify yourself for the record and then feel free to.
My name is Amy McManus. I live at 51 William Street, Northeastern. After the last meeting, for the last meeting, I had not seen the Woodward and Curran report. And after the last meeting, I read the Woodward and Curran report and sent an email to Andrea and asked if the board was going to follow any of the recommendations made by Woodward and Curran. I just heard you all say, no, you are not. Is that how I interpret it?
I think that's an oversimplification of our conclusion.
Why is it an oversimplification of your conclusion?
I believe that the conclusion that we had was that the LSP explained why their conclusion was different than Woodward and Curran's.
Okay, so I understand that you hired Woodward and Curran, or the town paid Woodward and Curran to look at any data gaps that they could identify in the Conoco testing. And so I don't know how much that costs to have that review done, but anyway, I think it's money worth spent, well spent. And in that document that Woodward and Curran, that's what I put in the chat, Woodward and Curran recommended doing some additional testing. And some of the things that they talked about, one in particular, was the soil pile that is located outside the area that Conoco tested. So there's no mention of a sand pile that I can see. I'm looking at the sand pile. I'm looking at the Conoco test pit map. And on the Conoco test pit map, the soil pile is actually located to the south of all of their test pits that the LSP talked about at the last meeting. So I'm wondering why, since both Woodward and Curran and back in 2013, Marta Nova talked about the soil pile, and the soil pile was also talked about in the 90s, why isn't the soil pile part of this testing?
So from my standpoint, I don't have a map of the soil pile. I've only seen a map of the soil pile that was drawn by someone. I don't even know the source of it. In addition to the map of the test pits, and I personally saw some overlap between the two of them, but I didn't have them over. I could only do it based upon where the location of the culvert is. So knowing where the culvert is, I believe that there are at least 2 or 3, maybe more test pits that are in a portion of where the sand pile, soil pile, whatever it is, that were there, and those test pits came back below reportable contamination levels.
And I would just point out as I recall, what Brian Klinger said, the LSP at the last meeting, that Nova Armstrong didn't have the information that DEP had found the action was taken was sufficient. And so 93 testing has been closed out, and that information wasn't available to Nova Armstrong. So there was no remediation done during that time. But that chapter is closed. What I'm asking about is the Woodward and Curran recommendations, and I sent you an email. And it's posted to the application, Ms. McManus.
And it says it's recommended that additional investigation of soil and groundwater be conducted. Soil sampling should be targeted at shallower intervals, which makes sense actually, because a lot of the stuff that landed, including the sewer sludge that was contaminated, laid on the top of that leaching bed. So they recommend shallower intervals across the majority of the subject property.
So just to address that issue, I mean, the LSP did address that in their response that's been posted to the permit.
5 to 6 feet. They
No,
didn't go too.
it says soil samples incorporating superficial soils from 0 to 2 feet below grade were previously analyzed for an extensive list of potential contaminant compounds at 2017 test pit locations TP01 through TP and TP15 through TP20. No overt visual, olfactory, or field VOC screening evidence of sufficient release of OHM was observed in the 2017 test pit locations throughout the site. And that's just the first sentence in their response to this.
So Woodward and Curran was wrong then, that they didn't, they have their information wrong. So you're saying that Woodward and Curran,
I'm not evaluating Woodward and Curran's response. I'm simply stating what the LSP's response to that particular question was. So they're stating that they did do testing at 0 to 2 feet at a number of the test pit locations.
all right, I will have to take a look at that because I don't see that. And then they go on to say recommended suite of analytical parameters to include in both soil and groundwater assessment. And they mention the Foundry soil pile. And there are several maps available for you to take a look at that show that soil pile. I have one on my, I don't know who drew all of them, but they are included in the reports. So there's a very clear map here that shows where the building was located, where all the test pits are, and where the soil pile is. And the soil pile is south of where Conoco tested, unless the Conoco map is wrong.
I don't have a single map where it's overlaid, so I can't tell you.
Well, isn't that fair?
And I'm willing to try and determine that so that I have a better sense of what that is. But
I would think that Woodward and Curran, who has been doing work for the town for decades, and I just was looking over their credentials, I would think that if you hired them to do this review and they're making recommendations, and one of the recommendations includes further analyzing the soil pit, that maybe the Conservation Commission and the town would want to know exactly where the soil and sand piles are. And if they took a look at some of these reports, there are maps in there that show where the sand pile is. And it is not located where Conoco did the testing. So
I've noted it.
Okay, thank you, because I think that's really important. And that was the question that I asked in the email, and I was told that it was discussed and I never got an answer. So I find that very frustrating to not get a response like that. You know, this is important, and I feel like you're moving forward with this in a way that's developer friendly and not environmental friendly. I'm sorry to say that, but that's my opinion. I was looking at the 584, the big, have you walked it? I mean, you're talking about walking people's yards that have pools in them. So have you walked this property?
Ms. McManus, I'm going to ask you to be respectful, okay?
I am being respectful.
Just a second, by implying that I haven't walked the property, okay, really is being disrespectful. I have walked this property a number of times over the past year and a half. Okay, so to imply that I haven't walked this property, I know that Commissioner Spadilla has walked this property probably a dozen times.
I was there 2 weeks ago, and I was there to check it all out.
To imply that somehow we're not taking our fiduciary responsibility here and taking a shortcut, you know, that really is, I don't know. I mean, we've been working on this project since January or February of 2020. I don't know how we could be doing much more than we are currently doing.
So are you comfortable when you walk the property back beyond the southern part of where the buildings are? Are you comfortable, even with the town-owned area, are you comfortable with what you're seeing there? You don't think that there's any indication that there's ever been any problem with dumping back there? Is that what you're saying? You're comfortable?
I believe that the testing has shown us that any contamination on this property is below reportable levels. I am comfortable with the testing that has been performed. Okay.
And Mike, can I ask Mike a question? Mike Spadia?
why don't you ask me, and I'll decide whether or not it's a question that the commission needs to answer.
Okay. So I'd ask you to talk to me with the respect that you're asking me to talk to you, because you're a very defensive person. So I just would ask for the same respect. I'm curious about, because Mike strikes me as the type of person that's a very outdoorsy type person, and he mentioned in the last meeting, you know, that he takes a great interest in walking the conservation areas and whatnot. So I'm asking him, because that's out of respect to him for having such an interest, that if he's been able to, with walking the property, has he been able to identify what some of the neighbors refer to as like an old camp area on the site where they have seen many barrels dumped, many barrels.
Good to go, Rory?
You can answer that question. I think it's a simple yes or no. So.
No, I saw barrels. There are a few old ones, but there was nothing in terms of a significant camp. There was, litter. Actually, it's funny. A lot of litter I was finding well beyond over Mulberry Brook, further back into the conservation area. So no, nothing that struck me as like, wow, this is a significant amount of debris or, so on. It seems pretty clean. I'm always surprised when people are saying there's more. I'm there all the time. I just don't see it. And I've walked it.
My concern, putting aside the fact that you guys think that I'm like a crazy person who's just making up reasons to come to these meetings, is my concern.
I want to be clear. I think that your contributions to the discussion have been valuable.
Okay.
I'm not in any way implying that you're a crazy person. So
yeah, my concern is that when I look at this from a more global perspective and remove I have no interest in this property as far as financial interest. I'm not a developer. I have no interest other than what I look at, and what I see is a big picture, a history of a factory that was a foundry that was purchased, and then the neighbors down there telling me what the purchaser did. Some of the reports I've read at the Board of Health with the dumping and the sludge, the mention of a 100-year-old dump, the soil pile repeatedly mentioned over and over and over again. And all of a sudden it's clean, and the whole property there's nothing to see here, people. There's nothing to see. And that's the way I see it. I don't mean to disrespect anyone. I ask questions. I expect answers because you're the experts. I've talked to neighbors who said they haven't seen anybody down there. So, okay, you've walked it many times. But, the person who's most affected, Barbara Bowden, she has never talked to anybody. So, and she's a quiet woman.
Ms. Bowden is welcome to contact the commission, attend a meeting. We've had many meetings on this, and we've heard from abutters, and so we haven't heard from her. So I'm happy to take her testimony, her comments.
Yeah.
In that. So I just want to clarify one thing. There has been no statement that this site is clean. Okay, the statement is that the contamination levels are below state reportable levels. Okay, so I just want to be very clear on this. No one's purporting that the site is clean. Okay, it is below reportable levels. So the contamination that's there is not high enough for the state to be concerned.
And you don't want to look anywhere beyond the current map or perimeter of testing that's been done by Conoco. You don't want to look at anything south of that where the water is flowing. You don't feel there's any concern back there.
Is that our property? And anything south of that is our property. So right. Are you saying that we need to do something about it?
I'm wondering if you have any concern about it.
I think that's outside the scope of this permit.
Okay. And
I
if,
also wonder-
and if you are saying, Rory, that you would be willing to do a little bit more research about where that sand pile is located, that would be very helpful. I would appreciate that. If you looked at the various maps and if you feel that that area is not going to have any impact on the development or this permit, then that's fine. I think that it should be looked at. I think the soil pile is actually the problem.
I have made a note of that. I actually spoke to the agent earlier today about this specific issue. So, and I actually spoke to her last week about the issue, this specific issue. And I will say that my judgment was that there were a couple of the test pits that were in the area of the soil pile. It didn't cover the entire area of the soil pile, but I felt that it was. Now I'm willing to re-examine that and get some more precise, because I didn't actually overlay the two, but I used the culvert as my guideline of where the test pits were versus where the soil pile was. And I felt that there were test pits that were in that area that were, had, the contamination level was below state reportable level. So I'm happy to relook at that. I do agree. And as I've already stated, I looked at it last week. I had a conversation this week with the agent about it. I'm happy to go back one more time and try and find some determination one way or another whether or not it's significant to this project.
Okay. Good luck to everybody with this project. I hope that it turns out to be a safe, lovely, beautiful place for families and children to live.
Great. Thank you for your comments.
I just wanted to point out a remarkable thing that the developer had offered at the last meeting, and that was to have an LSP on site whenever there's any excavation in areas of where there's been historic contamination. He would be available on site it is a requirement. It's a requirement if they were to find something that they stop and address the situation and remediate, but he would be on site to make sure it happens.
And I think we can condition that.
Yeah.
So that if something happens and let's say when they're pulling the culvert up, right? Because that culvert is on our property. And if they start to see either through soil visually or through olfactory methods, they start to understand that there's potential contamination there. The LSP can stop the project, investigate it, and figure out what's going on and just determine whether or not there has to be remediation right then and there. So I think that we can condition that. And I agree. I think that goes a long way in this. If we're actually digging in places where I just talked about test pits off-site, I mean, I don't know that I can require the applicant to test pit off-site, but onto our property, onto conservation property. But I can say that if you're going to daylight that stream and excavate there, that you're going to have an LSP on site so that if something comes up, we know what's going on. Any other comments from the commission on? So I think that anyway, I think that covers that. Mike, I know we want to talk about some of the floodplain and compensatory storage issue as well. So
right.
So I just want to review one thing. So amongst us right here at the commission, we've gotten all the information we need on the LSP. Whether or not it's sufficient or not is going to be when we come down to make the decision. But I don't know that I can get any more information than I possibly have right now for this particular project.
Agreed.
Okay. So, okay. So Mike, you're up about comments on compensatory storage, floodplain, and anything else water related you'd like to talk about.
Okay. Thank you. We do want to acknowledge that we've received a peer review from LEC. We received Andrea's staff report, and that our engineers are still working with Woodward and Curran's engineers on floodplain and stormwater. So all of that is still in progress. So obviously at the end of this tonight, we're going to wind up asking for another continuance so that we can finish up those investigations. But one thing I want to open up tonight, Mr. Chairman, and I think I'd mentioned this in the previous hearing, and I want to talk about it again tonight, is the subject of compensatory storage. And I'm going to share a couple of screens with you here. So this is the combination daylighting, and it's a little hard to see the culvert, but the culvert runs right through here. This is the combination daylighting with the new stream channel, the wetland mitigation, and the compensatory storage. Once this stream is daylighted, the floodplain upstream, the extent of the floodplain upstream changes dramatically. And so we have a different existing condition if we have removed the backwater that's caused by the culvert that goes through this site. So one of the ideas that I want to talk to the commission about is establishing the existing condition floodplain to be when the stream is daylighted as opposed to the stream in place. And the primary reason for that is that the original design of the compensatory storage was done per the Wetland Protection Act, and it was done with the culvert in place because that is the existing condition. And so once you calculate the amount of fill on the project on a foot-by-foot basis, based upon the culvert being in place, you wind up with this size compensatory storage area. Once you daylight this stream, there's a lot less fill in the floodplain due to the development up here because the floodplain has shrunk. And so this compensatory storage area becomes ineffective. It's really not needed based on that proposed existing condition with the stream daylighted. So I can't show you the exact extent of the, let me see. I want to share a different screen. I want to show you one other graphic I have that this is a work in progress, and that's why I wanted to talk to the commission about it. So are you seeing another graphic?
No.
Not yet. All right, let me try it again. Make sure I picked the right one. There we go. Okay.
There you go.
So this is similar to the figure that I showed you before. The red line is essentially the extent of the currently proposed compensatory storage. This is what the compensatory storage, if we did it in this area, could actually wind up being once you daylight the stream, because there's so much less fill that's going to occur. And actually, because of that, the floodplain elevation drops. And so there's a secondary problem with the existing design of the existing compensatory storage is it's too high. And so the floodplain, once you daylight the stream and the floodplain elevation drops, the floodwater never gets up in here. So what we're working right now on, and we're working with Woodward and Current on, is a redesign of this area. And actually there's another area that we're also taking a look at Woodward and Current suggestion to see whether or not there's a potential to do compensatory storage in a slightly different location, which is actually on the applicant's site as opposed to this, which is on the town property. And we'll have to see whether or not it's sufficiently large to be able to still provide the mitigation. But I want to talk to the commission about the commission accepting the existing condition being the daylighted stream channel as opposed to the culvert running through here with the backwater to that effect. And I'm not asking for a decision tonight, but I want you all to think about that. Okay, and there's good reason for that. And the good reason for that is we don't want to overbuild something and disturb some extra area on the town property that really doesn't have to be disturbed and will serve no purpose for flood storage in the future. Now, this area down here could stand some cleanup, and that's okay. We could do some of that, but we don't need to dig it out and replant it. We can dig out, this is an example, and it could be even a lot smaller than this. This is an example of how much we could shrink it. And if the other area is way up here. I don't have it on a graphic, unfortunately, but there's another area upstream on the brook that could serve as compensatory storage. And if we can use that area and use a smaller piece of this area, we can still take the culvert out, we can clean the area up, we can daylight the stream, we can provide wetland mitigation, and we can provide compensatory storage and disturb less total area doing all of that.
Yeah, so I think I understand, Mike, what's trying to be accomplished here, and I think that certainly from my perspective, I mean, I'll let other commissioners chime in here. I've been thinking about the daylighting of the stream as an essential part of this project. So because I think that it has other benefits other than just the floodplain issue going on here. I think that there's a tremendous wildlife benefit that we're going to need here as well. So I think that there's I think from my standpoint, using the daylighting of the stream and potentially looking at that as existing conditions to allow for less overall disturbance makes perfect sense to me. I mean, if we can get less disturbance in the wetlands than we're proposing otherwise, because we use the daylighting of the stream to recalculate the floodplain, I think that makes sense to me. I think that probably that necessitates having the daylighting of the stream be an early action item so that you get to the existing conditions before you start doing everything else.
Exactly.
And probably there'd be a benefit for us to even issue a partial cert on that part of the property so that it's registered as it's substantially in compliance with what was designed to get you where you need to on the rest of the project. I think that might make sense if that makes if that's clear to everybody else. I think decreasing the amount of fill, decreasing the amount of disturbance that's possible when we want the daylighting of the stream anyway, I think that makes perfect sense to me. Any other comments? You guys, daylighting of the stream is probably something on our list already of something we expect to happen. So.
No, I agree. Roy, I agree with you, and also Mike. Saying making it smaller and bringing up the culvert, I mean the catch basin up towards more the front of that property. I definitely like that idea, just because that back half is so. That's where I feel like you're really in the heart of that forest. So any way to minimize that would be really awesome.
Right, and that's Mike. That's one thing that I'm looking at with Woodward and Curran, because the engineer looks at the floodplain and looks at the map, but the engineer doesn't necessarily look at the habitat. And so I'm entering into the discussion now with them, saying, "Hey, that's a great idea hydraulically, but from a habitat standpoint, it may not be the best idea." So
gotcha.
we're still working that out with them. This area that we're talking about down here is fairly disturbed. So
yeah,
compensatory storage area makes sense. As you go further up on Beaver Brook, you're getting into more undisturbed areas that are also closer to the brook. They're not necessarily closer to the vernal pool, because the vernal pool is on the other side, but they are closer to the brook. And so Lori and I have to look and see, does that make sense from an ecological standpoint? As the engineers say, does that make sense from a hydraulic standpoint?
Gotcha.
Ben?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the less impact, the less you disturb, the better.
And do we agree that the daylighting of the stream is, just we consider it part of this project at this point?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think there's. I think it's from these members here, daylighting of the stream, is an essential part of this project going forward. So right. I think if you want to sort of go upon that and start building, some different sort of hydrologic models based upon that, I think that's a safe bet to do.
Yeah, and we're making sure that, and Woodward and Curran's making sure on behalf of the commission and the town, that this still fits the letter of map revision process.
Right.
Because we have to keep that in mind as well.
Of course.
We had even kicked internally, we had kicked around the idea of taking the daylighting of the stream out as a separate project, and having it be an a priori project, but it's been filed this way, and to go back and to do this as a separate ecological restoration project would have been a great idea 2 years ago, but isn't as good an idea right now.
Yeah, and like I said, I think there's probably a path to us getting there in sort of the same sort of manner to you as far as, keeping it as an early action item and even potentially, issuing a partial cert for that part of the project. So
Okay.
I'm open to all of that from
All
my
right,
side.
thank you.
If we get the project approved and that's part of the project, then I think that's probably the way to go.
All right, thank you. That's really what I wanted to cover tonight, was moving forward with this concept so we can keep going with Woodward and Curran.
So Andrea talked a little bit earlier about sort of staging this, continued hearing process here, and so what's up next on our agenda? What's the timeline on it? Where do you think you stand at this point?
So I'm hearing back from the engineering teams on both sides that because after the floodplain comes stormwater, and after that comes Lori and I going back and reevaluating, make sure we have the right impact numbers and we have the right wording in the waivers and all that, that there's probably no way we're going to be ready for July 12th. And I have an ulterior motive for that, because July 12th is my birthday. And as much as I love you guys, I'd rather not be in a hearing on my birthday. So I don't think we're going to be ready for July 12th. I did hear at the beginning of the meeting that you were considering meeting in August on the 6th or on the something, right?
Yeah, I think it's the 3rd, maybe.
Okay, third or the 9th or something like that, or 3rd. So if I may have to, well, on the 3rd, I won't be calling you in because I'll be in Yellowstone National Park.
Okay.
And on the next meeting, if the next meeting is the following week, I'm going to be in Montana from the 1st to the 14th. So not that I'm the kingpin here, but if I mean, I can have Lori come and I can have others come. I'd really like to be here. But I don't want that to mean that we have to continue this until September, because Rick will kill me. So if you're still considering doing a meeting in that last week of July, I'm around for that. But I know that you're talking about pushing that off probably for your own reasons.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
So we're definitely so I think from this point we'll continue. Do you want us to continue to the 12th, and you can tell us when you might be ready, and then we can continue it again? I mean, just knowing that the 12th is probably not going to happen.
Yes, I would do that.
Can I ask Mike Toohill, is the August 23rd too late as a second choice?
So is July 26th or whatever it is definitely out of the question?
If it's likely, but July 26th is one choice and August 23rd, would that be considered late, or are you likely to have things done by the 23rd?
Oh, I would hope they're done by the 23rd. And if it push comes to shove, if we're going to meet the 1st or 2nd week of August, we will have people at the meeting, even if I have to dial in from 2 time zones to the west.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, July 26th just presents a conflict for me. So that's.
Why don't we continue to the 12th, and then we'll just play it by ear.
Okay, so any additional public comment on 560 Foundry? Okay, so seeing none, a motion to continue 560 Foundry to July 12th.
Spady, second.
Roll call, Caulfield's aye.
Carroll, aye.
Spady, aye.
Okay, Mike, we'll be in touch and we'll work this out where we're going, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yep. Okay, so we are now to the board discussion part of this thing, and we have Phil Benjamin as the first topic here.
Is Phil back?
Yeah, he's there.
Phil, are you in?
Yes, I am. And
hey.
Tom Farrell should be there as well.
Okay, I'm promoting.
Okay, you guys are both there. You can unmute yourself, turn on video, whatever you need to do.
Oh, is my video off?
It is.
Good grief, after all that.
There it is.
Ah, okay, there I am.
Awesome.
All right, well, that was interesting.
Good to see you guys.
Tom there? Oh, there he is.
Yep.
Tom.
Yep, just getting checked in.
So why don't you guys just introduce yourselves for the record?
All right, my name's Phil Benjamin, owner of Benjamin Forestry Services. Tom Farrell, my right-hand man for the last 10 or 11 years. Licensed forester here in the state of Massachusetts as well.
Okay.
And headquartered here in Southeastern,
Awesome.
of all places.
So what do you have for us tonight?
Whew. Well, Tom and I spent 6 quality days, serious solid days, each tramping around parts of Wheaton Farm. And it just continues to amaze me what an impressive piece of property Wheaton Farm is, and how lucky Easton is to have that under its protection. It was spectacular. We were in there doing our field work a little later in the season than we preferred in terms of jungle-like conditions in a few areas, but the benefit was the bird life was out of control. It was awesome. So it just was a really diverse, interesting, impressive property. Tom?
Yeah, most times when Phil and I go on a town property, especially that's one's, that a property is so publicized and has good parking and trailheads, a lot of times we get there and it's crisscrossed with trails. And we understand that, a loop trail is way better than a frozen rope, and everyone likes to kind of go see different parts of the property. But the real special thing with the town of Easton and Wheaton Farm was so much of that area that didn't have trails through it. So it really was wild. I don't know exactly the numbers, but when you have a trail, even if it's through a really large body, block of woods or contiguous woods, there's still an impact that the trail has on the wildlife. There's certain birds that nest on the ground and they just won't really do it too close to a trail. So to have such big blocks of contiguous woods without trails through them, it really is, just really productive for the area, for the wildlife that's in that area.
Did you guys see any otters?
No, I bumped into a gentleman that was walking. There's a dam that's sort of blown out where the old camp and stuff was, that area.
There's one over there.
There was a gentleman over there that had talked, just told me a quick story in passing about how special it was to see an otter out there. So
it exists.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure fishers are running through there. Yeah, so it really can house
footage if you like.
Oh, nice.
Tons of them.
Yeah,
there were a ton of deer stands out there. It's got to be a pretty popular spot.
It's an old spot. It's a very old spot. It's not really well hunted now. That's just because of generations, coming out of hunting. But yeah, there's a ton of old stuff in there. It was really.
I know there was some newer ones. I passed at least one game cam at a site. Someone had done a little feed plot with some grasses.
Really?
Yeah, it was deep in the heart, but it was out there.
Was it?
Yeah, but before we headed out to do the work, there had been concerns about a lot of quad or OR, off-road vehicle traffic out there. But
didn't see it.
I don't know if there was. It must have been a demographic that's kind of come and gone. Some of the roads look like they had quads on them. Some of the regular walking trails, but there was nothing cut out in the woods except for a path out to a deer stand.
Yeah, nothing super obvious. I've never seen it.
Yeah, even those
some ground.
Yeah, even those newer deer stands that Phil was saying, I saw a couple ones that they looked like they were being used, recently. But even those, they didn't have that like classic trail blazed right
Yeah.
up to it to make
Right, you
everybody kind of, wonder what's going on down there. You know,
Right,
it just, it was still pretty hidden.
Yeah,
We could have used a couple of those trails in a few places.
it's thick in there. It is the thickest place. Yeah, it's crazy.
So anyway, it was really interesting to get off sort of the main trails there, right when you come over the dam from the parking area. Some of the woods out there are just really interesting in terms of the growth. I mean, there's areas over on the east side of Foundry Street, 123, where there's been a lot of die-off in the oaks over the years, and you have this presence of bare oak, scrub oak, which you would find down in the Pine Barrens in Plymouth and Wareham.
Isn't that wild?
What's that?
It's so, I've seen that too. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
and it's not like there is a recorded history of fire out there. We actually brought Tim Simmons in when he used to work for Natural Heritage back when we did the same kind of stewardship plan for the town forest by the high school. And we ended up in this pocket of bare oak that just blew us away. And we had Tim Simmons come down. He actually came out and walked out there with us, and he seemed to feel that it was more of a frost pocket situation there that was kind of keeping other growth down. But it was really flat there in the town forest. But here in the Wheaton Farm, it was definitely it was sloped, gentle slope. It was definitely not the low pocket. So it was really interesting to be something to kind of keep in the back of the mind to look into a little bit more. Plus you have the pitch pines, again, another fire species. So I don't know. That part of the property historically had been used as a wood supply for making charcoal for the foundry. They're on 106 back in the 1800s. So there might have been just the constant cutting off of that area, and then coupled with the mortality in the oak more recently, maybe perpetuates that bare oak and pitch pine. I don't know. It's really interesting. Something we still want to figure out. But there are areas out on that property that will probably never have anything done, if for no other reason, because you can't access it very well. There are other areas that have been screaming for some kind of attention for the last 20 years. And there's other areas where it really is ready. When Tom and I go out on the property, especially in a town property or a land trust property where there's a long horizon, we're always looking at what that next generation of trees are that are in place in your woods. Because you really want to have that continuum of ages of species. At some point the overstory is going to die or fall down or blow down. You'd like to have something of value or something that has biological value, aesthetic value in place. And there's areas out there where you just have a big mature forest without much coming in. So yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, probably one of the highlights of the property for all the people visiting is just you walk across the ponds and you get into that pine forest that's just, massive. Really tall pines, cathedral-like when you're walking those trails. I mean, you just feel tiny underneath them. But the reality of that Phil and I were seeing was there was a lot of glossy buckthorn sort of growing in the understory. And glossy buckthorn can kind of grow in the shade. They're kind of semi-shade tolerant. So they are allowed to keep on photosynthesizing and growing and establishing themselves underneath that big canopy. Well, young pine trees, they need a lot of sunlight to grow. So what you have underneath those dominant pines are a whole lot of little pine trees that don't really have the sunlight they need to establish themselves up into the canopy. So they're kind of at this point right now where they're there and they look okay. But I think in 5 to 10 years, things are going to look really, really different in there just because, and if nothing happens and the trees, remain there, then I think the shade is going to end up shading out and killing the young pine trees, the glossy buckthorn is going to keep on, keep on growing in that shade and really establish itself. And then you're kind of screwed because the buckthorn is big, like 8 to 15 feet tall at that point. There's no younger trees because they're shaded out. And the big trees, even if you open up some sunlight now and start some younger trees growing, you're going to have this big component of buckthorn that's just gonna create its own shade onto the actual forest floor. So in that case, so Phil alluded to a lot of the oaks dying, and a really strong component of red maple, some sassafras, tupelo, and white pine were underneath those oaks. And now those young trees they're the canopy. They're what's going to be the next forest, sort of this mixed hardwood white pine forest. Now, if that same thing happened in the white pine stands, if something was to attack the white pines, that the species coming up are going to be a little bit of white pine and a whole lot of invasive species. So from a diversity point of view, diversity is good just to have, just from a biological point of view, providing different habitat for different species. But really, diversity is really huge for combating things like climate change and just whatever Mother Nature throws at us next. If you have a good diversity of species, usually if an insect comes in, they're kind of specialists and they focus on one species. Well, that species can die out and get attacked by the insects, and you got a whole bunch of others that can take its place. But when you're riding with just kind of this one dominant white pine species and nothing really underneath that's going to step up when if something happens, it's vulnerable. It's more vulnerable than other parts of the property. So this was really interesting. You had the areas where the oaks had died out, and this young forest has been emerging and is now kind of growing out of a young forest and getting into a little bit semi-mature forest. And then you have areas like the white pine that's sort of one species and has some good things going on right now. But like I said, 5 to 10 years of continuing shade and those big trees are sucking up a lot of the water and a lot of the nutrients that are in the soil. 5 or 10 more years of that kind of stress, and a lot of those young trees are going to die out, and you're going to end up just all of a sudden noticing just slight differences out there. And then it will be like, whoa, where'd all our young trees go? And then at the same time, there's areas on, let's see, the east side of Bay Road that have, they don't have trails through them. There's somewhat good access into them. And there's areas that are sort of in that same point of a spot of young trees are established. They've taken advantage of some openings that Mother Nature's created, and now they're at a point where they may need a little extra help to grow and keep going up into the canopy. You can sit back and let Mother Nature do it, and the trees that die out will die out, and then new ones will seed in over time, and some will make it, and that has value to that process. But in the meantime, as those trees are dying out, they're really stressed. And when they're stressed, that's when, just like humans, their immune systems go down, and certain funguses and diseases and insects that normally exist and they can kind of battle with, they come in and they can actually start, actually killing a lot of these species. So growing trees that are stressed, although they still can grow and make it, they're vulnerable to some of these insects and diseases. And that's where climate change really rears its head, because just these little differences in degrees of temperature, to us, 1 degree might not mean anything, but to diseases and funguses, it means everything to them. So really 1 degree, all of a sudden you can have these different funguses that come in that you just would never be, you'd never think would be a problem. But now all of a sudden they start showing themselves, and you say, okay, well, the trees are really stressed. They're all fighting for resources. Those are the ones that might end up kind of to succumbing to some of these, things that we can't predict really. No one can really predict them happening. No one knows the next insect that's going to come along, or the disease or fungus. So it was a really interesting property that way, because not the whole, the whole property, there's so many different habitats between the grass fields, the wetlands, woods, the open wetlands. There's such a diverse of habitat out there that it's neat, because you don't have to do, or you don't have to do anything, but you don't have to do something like on all parts of the property. It lends itself to kind of this working forest where you could kind of experiment possibly in some areas, and let other areas grow. And you can really, with the property being, locked up with the town, it's great, because some things like that, you can really show 20, 25, 50 years into the future. Managers can be looking and saying, wow, this is working here. This isn't working. It's just a good living kind of classroom to have, I guess, for the town.
The plan was 142 pages long, so it's pretty beefy. So if you guys end up having trouble falling asleep at night, a couple of pages of stand descriptions will help. But I did send along to Andrea, and I think she may have forwarded. There's an overview, like a 4-page overview, that spares you a lot of the agony of, or just reading through the stand descriptions. That really kind of cuts to the chase as far as what the intent of the plan was, sort of how the property fits into the bigger picture. It describes very broadly some of the things that could be considered for the property. So we sent that along, and then today I sent one map. It takes 7 maps at 1 to 660 scale to encompass the whole property now. So Tom broke them up into blocks with the GIS. The block that over in the southeast corner between Dean Street and Prospect Street, that had the former Schofield property on it, had 2 or 3 different things that were sort of snapshots or examples of some of the recommendations that we did make. And the thing to keep in mind is, because we didn't really have a chance to meet really with the commission before we dug into this thing, the recommendations that you read once you get into the plan have been designed for the sake of the woods themselves. You guys are not locked into anything if you choose not to, but there are areas that we feel would really benefit from some of these management attention. There is some areas that could support some harvesting for logs or thinning for firewood. Those open grasslands are just absolutely fabulous just for continuing to keep as open grasslands, especially up where the old dairy farm was, east and west of the silos. There's bobolinks, I think, need 10 acres of grassland, contiguous grassland. Vesper sparrows need 15. So there's certain species that will benefit from the management you've already been doing. There's one section in behind the Schofield property where used to be his garden a long time ago, and it's grown into abandoned field, and half that abandoned field is 6 or 7 inch diameter white pines that look like corkscrews because they're all weevilled, having grown in a field. Where we've made the recommendation that one thing to consider for that area would be to actually clear it with the intention of creating early successional forest, which is a really important component of the landscape of habitats. And that's those couple of recommendations I just described were in I sent along a few more to Andrea later today. I'm not sure whether we'll have time to deal with it right now, and maybe it doesn't make sense, but what I was going to suggest was, knowing how long your meeting's going tonight and how much more interesting and more meaningful it would be if we actually could schedule a meeting sometime out in the field, the commission, to kind of go over, give you guys a chance to kind of take a poke at the plan, and then with the plan in the back of your mind, maybe we we schedule a meeting out there for a walk and talk and just kind of take that next step.
That sounds way better than talking about it here.
Yeah, no, you guys have had a long night already, I can tell. And I'm not sure how much longer it's going. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but the one thing that, for better for worse, that we have to deal with is the funding from DCR ends June 30th. And we need to have the plan into DCR end of this week or by Monday. So
what do you need from us in order for that to happen?
well, there was a little survey that I actually remember to send out ahead of time that I think Andrea circulated with the commission, and a few of you guys had the time or the interest to weigh in on that. So there's that little survey page that I need back, and there's a signature page. Yep. There's a signature page that I realized if Andrea is in the office tomorrow, I can swing by for a signature page, and then the form from DCR indicating the plan is prepared and ready for payment needs to be signed as well. So I thought I could swing by and meet with her tomorrow, provide her with a hard copy of the plan, and grab a signature page or two.
So, Andrea, what do you need from us in order to be authorized to do that?
You did authorize, for Ben's benefit, this is a grant from DCR that Ben encouraged the commission to go for. And it's a reimbursable grant. So when you authorize the grant, you did authorize the funding. They actually funded 80% of this work. So I've got the authorization.
Okay.
And I think that the best thing I do want, Tom, while a hard copy plan is fabulous, because that's how I read things, I do want an electronic copy of the plan. And so I can send you out the excerpts that I was given this week for you to read. And then I think the best thing is getting out there with Phil and Tom at a date that works best for you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've already been out, once with Phil on this particular project. Walk at least a small part of the property. So it's fascinating to be out there and actually see and understand what's being sort of described in the report. I did get a chance to read the 4-page summary that was sent out today. So I appreciate you doing that. And I found it fascinating, of course. And we were very excited about the prospects of this property because we do think this piece of property is a very valuable resource for the town, not just from a wildlife and wetland resource standpoint, but just from a public use standpoint as well. And so I think that sort of gets reflected in some of the survey results we've already seen. That I think our major our major concern about this particular project is about wildlife habitat and sustainability of the vegetation and the hardwoods and the pines. So I mean that's we listened to what you said. Tom's presentation to us was right on mark for me. And the biodiversity and of plants and animals is obviously something that will do this piece of property well for the next decades and decades. Tom mentioned that sort of the focus. This is a long plan for us, and that's the way we think about it. I want this plan to be just the foundation of something that sustains beyond my participation here in the commission, or even even being within town. So I'd like to see the positive results of what we do and take this to that level. So
Cool.
And obviously if we can fund it through harvesting of lumber out of there, that helps us because we have a very limited budget. But if we can pull some lumber out of there that makes sense to pay for what's being done, then that's great too. So yeah, I'm all up for trying to arrange for a meeting. If there's more than 3 of us at any one time, we'll have to post it as a public meeting, but that's not a problem.
No, that'd be fun. I mean, Tom and I, we've definitely had our share of the various spectrum of philosophies on what people do with their property. And it can be a lively discussion, but we don't shy away from it. You know, we certainly have our biases.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be great.
Fantastic. Any other questions for Tom or Phil?
None for me. It's awesome.
Just an overall question on the survey. So I filled out the survey, but did not submit it because it looked like it was looking for a signature, and I didn't want to sign on behalf of everybody. Do we have to agree to sign that as a group? More for Andrea, or are you guys just looking for the responses?
Responses are dynamite, and we can have 2 or 3 pages of, I'll just staple them in page 2A of whatever, or 2B, for each of you guys. The town of Walpole last year, the chairman kind of weighted all the answers. So he had a 4.2 and a 3.1 and a 5.0 and a 0.0, whatever, based on the responses he had there. But either way works. We've had some private landowners that just, produce a whole page, a whole essay on what their love of their land entails. So we just added in. But as long as you can get that to Andrea, either by email or physically by midday tomorrow.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
Ben, I just even typed my name at the bottom, so
Got it.
send it to Andrea, and she compiled them together. So.
Yeah, I did. I'll resend the compilation. Ben, what I did with the 3 responses I got, yours would be the 4th, is I just added it all together. 3 people said hi, 1 person said hello. This is the response of the commission. So you can, I wasn't assuming that you needed to sign them individually, but you did need to read that there's a stewardship, like, it's almost like the Cub Scout creed, that you have to, you do want to read the stewardship statement of, you guys are the Lorax for Easton, so, so do well. It says something like that.
Okay, great. So let's, Phil, work with Andrea on getting paperwork you need to get that submitted, and Andrea will be in the office tomorrow. I think I actually will be in for a moment as well. I have to go in and sign some papers. So so happy to have you guys on the project. So.
Yeah, Ben, if you want to email that to me anytime now, between now and when Phil shows up, because he wants, I think you're going to give me a bound copy that you give him to DCR. So this is a priority. There's only 4 priorities when you've got 2 days left.
I'll get it to you by like 10 a.m. tomorrow. Does that work?
That's perfect. I probably won't see Andrea till midday anyway. So.
Tom, just my comment, Tom, I love the posters. I think you even have a booster there too. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Apparently, I know what I'm looking at. So.
I could walk you around, but I think you guys are busy tonight. So.
Yeah. I'll get my portfolio. How's that?
It sounds good. Well, it's good talking with you guys.
All.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was great. So appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time tonight for us.
I will send everybody the excerpts he sent me already. It does make for good reading, and everybody will get the 142 pages that raise their hand and say they want it, because I know Mike Spadilla will actually and comment on it.
Yeah, if you've been out there as much as you've had, you can probably call us on a few of those, what you read as you're reading through it. So
happily do it. I will.
Cool. Good. Thank you all.
I think we have to send Mike to forestry school, to be honest.
I want to become a forester. So Phil, if you ever need someone or you ever want to teach someone, you let me know.
Phil, do they? Yeah, I think you're going to talk about the Keystone project.
Yeah. UMass Extension runs this the Keystone program every year.
Okay.
It's a weekend immersion in forestry and wildlife management. And I have heard nothing but raves. And there's been some people that have been pretty diehard tree huggers that have come back from that, just almost a new person. So if you already have a sense of the woods and how they work, oh man, this will light a little fire under you. You'll be
I need a fire. Let's go.
Yeah, and it's geared right for, you know, Conservation Commission members.
Yes, exactly.
You know, they invite all the different Conservation Commissions that they can get. So it's not only you get a good snapshot of forestry and wildlife biology and everything, you know, you get to network a little bit with people in the same field and their, you know, problems that they're having or successes, you know, those get to be exchanged too. So it seems like a pretty nice project.
Be a nice, good fit for you.
Seems like you got a project, Mike. There you go.
Yeah.
It can be funded also by the town's wetland application fees.
There you go, Mike. Look at
Ooh,
that.
I was going to ask anyway, but this is even better.
Well, knowing that, Tom and I will keep an eye out. It comes out in the early winter when they're looking for applicants.
Cool. Perfect.
So we'll definitely keep you in mind.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, Phil and Tom.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night now.
All right, guys.
Andrew, thanks.
So next up on the agenda is the Tufts Farm RFP Review Committee recommendations. So we have 3 members of the review committee here, but we met on, I don't know, June
14th of June.
June 14th. And at that meeting, we reviewed the both proposals, and we made a recommendation to accept the proposal from the current tenant, Mike Luke, and his wife, and the vote was 4-0. So I think that's where we stand. I think do we have to take a vote here to accept that recommendation?
And the town administrator supported your recommendation. He's the municipal's chief procurement officer.
Yep.
So he directed town council, based on the recommendations of the evaluation committee, to proceed with drafting a lease.
Okay, so should we take a vote to accept the recommendation as well? So I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Tufts Farm RFP Review Committee.
Spady, second.
To recommend Mike Luke. Spady, second.
Second again.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
Very good. Minutes, I reviewed both of them, had no comments. I think they're okay to approve. Anybody have any comments?
None.
I agree.
So I make a motion to accept the minutes for April 20th, 2021 and May 5th, 2021 as written.
Spady, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
I swear to God, I'm going to start saying that like in my everyday work life. Roll call vote.
Did you skip over 58 mil?
Yes, I did. So we'll go back to 58 Mill. Sorry. So 58 Mill Street, Andrea. So this is a project that started out in front of us a couple of years ago, and they had to submit a letter of map reduction to FEMA, map revision for FEMA.
And that was done. They went into a holding pattern. It's a 6-lot subdivision at 58 Mill Street. It is a mapped habitat, and it is the flood insurance rate map was incorrect for the area. So they got the flood map revision approved in November of this past year after quite a bit of work. And they are redesigning apparently based on that information. They are ready to submit, but there's only one member who is eligible to vote because Mike and Carol actually missed 2 meetings.
We missed both of those, of course.
So So they're asking to withdraw a project that hasn't seen the light of hasn't seen the light of a public hearing in a long time. And asking to withdraw and then waive the local application fee by resubmitting within the next 30 days of the withdrawal, a timely resubmittal. They've agreed that in resubmitting, they have to pay the state application fee. They would pay any peer review, which basically would start from scratch. And they would pay for the legal notification. So the state fee will cover, it'll probably be like $3,000 to $5,000, maybe closer to $3,000. You don't actually have to cover the cost of your staff in your application fee. And so what we were doing in the past, what we were doing with this application is the local fees, it was like more, like 8 or 10. So we use that for peer review. In this case, we're saying you pay the peer reviews. He's asking it to pay the peer review separately, and the staff works off of the way the staff always works, is off of their town salary. So I recommend that you allow the withdrawal because he needs it for quorum. And it's your choice to waive the application fee. It will start with a new staff agent. But she'll have the benefit of my reports from the past project.
Yeah, so I think that, so from my perspective, I'm generally in favor of these as long as the applicant's been diligently pursuing the project. And I think while there's been a gap in a public hearing on this, and we had agreed to continue it until the letter of map revision had been approved by FEMA. So I think they've met that burden of diligently pursuing it. So I'm in favor of allowing them to withdraw without prejudice and resubmit, waiving the local fees. So I will. You could make that motion. How about that?
Ooh.
You could actually just you could say so moved, and then you get to make the motion. How's that?
All right, Gil, make the motion. So motion to, oh God, now I'm gonna panic. Motion to waive the fees and I don't even know. What do I say? So I need a motion. I'll say. Oh, you'll say the motion. Oh, okay.
Then you just say so moved, and that's you're making
so moved. There we go.
So I need a motion to withdraw the application, allow the applicant to withdraw the application 58 Mill Street without prejudice and resubmit, waiving the local fees.
So moved.
Carol, second.
There we go.
Roll call vote. Colville's aye.
Carol, aye.
Beatty, aye.
Just before we move along here, thank you guys. Before we move along here, I believe that Tish has asked us, do you have to vote to bring the lease to the select board? I don't think we have a lease yet, so.
There is both no lease and it'll be reviewed internally through the town administrator's office. The conservation is in the unique position of being the one that signs the lease by special legislation.
Okay.
You take advantage of the smart guys in the corner office, but you can sign it.
Okay, so the next item was Carol was going to give us an update on the CPC, but she's not with us, so we will bypass that. Update on the state of emergency transition, and we have to propose a new signature delegation authority. So, Andrea, you want to give us the update?
Sure. A clean copy was sent out today. You saw the rough copy from town council. Basically, we we have been working under remote meetings and delegated authority, you guys delegating your authority to the environmental planner or her successor. And based on the COVID state of emergency. State of emergency is over, but there was an act to extend. I'm not seeing my copy of it. So do you need to see a clean copy of it, or did you all have a chance to read the draft? Okay, so basically he said change the authority to the current legislation that was passed the day after the state of emergency ended on June 16th, and extend to me or my successor. We'll get that. If you guys agree to that, we can, Rory can sign it tomorrow. We can get it recorded and we can use it for the decisions of this meeting.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
you know, remote meetings extend through April of 2020 unless you choose to, you have the option of staying remote through April of 2020.
Right. So
2022.
2022, yeah. So yeah, I think it was April 20th, 2022. And so I think, so that was passed by, amongst many other things, including allowing, I won't get into some of the things they allowed. It was funny that if you looked at the list of things that were approved, it was a mishmash of stuff that was like, how are those two things related? So Zoom meetings are going to be allowed through April of 2022. And obviously, you guys, it's been so long, Ben actually hasn't even been at one in person, but, during a regular meeting, all the papers gets passed around and we all sign them. But obviously we can't do that. So yeah, so Andrea has to, Andrea has been signing on our behalf, and it has to get recorded in the deed of registrars and all sorts of things so that they accept it. And obviously, this being Andrea's last meeting as agent, that she will no longer be signing on our behalf. So whoever is the successor will then have that authority to do so.
And in the transition, I might come back as a consultant to assist with certain commission business, but the person who will be delegated the signature would be Stephanie Danielson. She's still an employee of the town and should be my transitional successor.
So we got it covered. And so, any questions about this? We just need to take a vote to authorize this. Okay. So I make a motion to authorize the signature delegation for the environmental planner on behalf of the board as presented.
Speedy second.
So move.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Speedy aye.
Okay, so I will see you tomorrow to sign my signature and get it notarized. So.
And anytime that works well for you.
Yeah, probably just before noon is probably best. I have a 10 o'clock meeting I got to do here. So, okay. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Works for me.
Okay.
And we have to make sure, and I'll let the notary in town hall know to expect you sometime between 11:30 and 12.
So what are the mask rules in town hall?
Yeah, you have to. Yes.
Okay, just I won't
bring one. And if you don't bring one, you'll get one.
I've got plenty of them.
Reader, from what I understand, who'll offer you assistance.
Thank you. Will they put it on for me too? So the next item on the agenda was an issue that actually came up because I had my own conflict. It actually turned out to be a work conflict, not a vacation conflict in the summertime. I originally thought that I had a vacation conflict, but that actually turned out to be okay. I thought the 23rd was going to be a problem, but I think I'm okay. And now that we're even doing remote meetings, but at the same time, the 26th, I have a work commitment that week. I'm out of town, and so I'd like to move that meeting at the very least. Plus, I want to try and figure out what everybody else's situations are.
It's also add to that. It's likely that my successor isn't going to start before the end of July.
So the less meetings we have between now and end of July is better.
Cuts into my
selfishly, I'm going to say that that's the case, because doing this without, I've only done this with Andrea, so. So what? So does anybody else have any conflicts with the current schedule?
No, I plan around it, so I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. I'm sure I'll have one this summer that'll pop up, but I don't have anything that I know about yet.
So what was originally proposed was to eliminate the 26th and move it to the 2nd of August, and then eliminate the 9th.
Right.
So we would convert 2 meetings into one and split the difference between those 2 meetings.
That would allow, you have a 21-day, you have a requirement to get meetings scheduled within 21 days of the filing deadline. So that allows you to meet your filing deadlines and get your decisions written before the next meeting.
So I'd like to switch the meeting if you guys are up for it. Plus, it gives us a little bit of flexibility with the new agent that's coming on board.
Yeah,
totally cool.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to change the July 26th meeting to August 2nd and eliminate the August 9th meeting.
Maybe a second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
ADI.
Okay. Environmental planner updates.
Yeah. Well, you got most of them with Tufts Farm, and we got Wheaton Farm, the Sam Wright Field. I went for a contract extension because being an environmental planner and all, didn't know the procurement rules of the cost to get an excavator out there. So we did get an extension on Wheaton Farm today, signed. Clifford Grant ATVs is the latest spot for ATVs, and so we pulled out the old letter and sent letters to the abutters of Clifford Grant, reminding them that ATV use is prohibited. And besides the fact, what we didn't put in the letter is those boardwalks that have been built by volunteers were not built to withstand ATV use.
They had quads on the boardwalk?
I hope not.
Oh, okay. So I couldn't even imagine how they get over there. Whew.
It's just too small a property for ATV use.
It's illegal.
And it's
simple
illegal.
as that. It's illegal. Done. There's
that's what
5
the
places in
letter
the
says.
state to do it. Go there and get a trailer and do it.
Yeah. And
I do it with mine.
Tell your neighbors is what the letter says. It is illegal, just in case. So that you might hear some people saying it's a letter that got sent to the abutters, but also to the police chief and the select board, that it is a known problem. It's the first one I've sent in 4 years because they work for like 2 weeks, but 2 weeks is good. The legislation passed. Expect a minor modification for lot 5. That's coming. We're working on the memorial benches. Owen Eldridge, I want you to remember that he's doing a trail network in Pequannock, and we could be hearing by July 1 as to whether or not we, the town, conservation, got a grant to fund the materials. So, Mike, you have been tagged as project manager for this.
Mhm.
You said you would do it, and I didn't forget.
Perfect.
Jacob, our Eagle Scout, building the pollinator garden. I signed for him. He's moving forward through the summer with Jonathan Chase being his buddy. And you heard about Chris Patrick's weekly volunteer trail crew on Wednesdays during the summer. He's getting good results, using Instagram. And Wayne Beitler is taking over the project management of the Wheaton Farm barn repairs. The project that moves forward a little bit at a time, but we have $190,000 to do the foundation, the roof, and the shingles, and put it back into the shape it should be. And we won't have the money, but we do have to get it into procurement. So that's it for me. I'm like I said, the new agent has been offered the job, is likely to start at the end of July. I've been asked to stay on board in a limited capacity to keep you guys running, to do the technical review for your applications, certainly for the meeting on July 12th. And we'll see after that.
Just to clarify, Tish had a question. What time?
That was for when you were showing up to the town hall. But you guys kind of already answered it.
Yeah, just before noon.
Oh, okay.
Between 11:30, yeah, after 11:30.
Yeah, around 11:30 or so. So I'll try and get there, so I'm not running into people's lunches, so. I get cranky around noon too, so, a couple of things, just one is I just want to, publicly, send good thoughts out to Charlie, who's, having some underlying health problems that he's dealing with. So, I do touch base with him. He does answer email if you happen to want to just drop him a note. So, he's very grateful for getting notes. So, feel free to reach out to him, and wish him the best, of course. And of course, goes without saying here that this being Andrea's last official meeting with us, it is with great sadness and happiness that I am to congratulate Andrea on retiring and sailing her way into retirement. So I really am quite envious, and I really hope you have a great time, and you've contributed a tremendous amount to my own personal knowledge base and growth in this position. And I do appreciate all the support that you've always provided to us, as well as your support personally. I do appreciate that, and it really means a lot to me to have worked with you for 4+ years, and really look forward to hearing stories of your retirement, which sounds like fun. So,
thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with the commission for the last 4.5 years. I, as you know, came from state service, multiple decades, and it gave me a very fresh perspective on actual on-the-ground work. I had been an agent when I first started my job in my environmental field career, and it was totally intimidating, to have to stop people on excavators. But coming at it after I had been through some more difficult cases than Easton's seen, it was so refreshing and so much fun. And the developers and the applicants and the commissioners were, everybody's been very pragmatic, and let's just get through it, and let's just, even enforcement cases we're just going to get through this and get to the other side. Plus, we did some construction projects together, and we cleaned up the regs. And it was just the kind of stuff I like to do. So I really appreciated the time with you guys. I could spend longer, but you know, it's really hard in the summertime. So you guys keep at it, and you know.
Hey, I'm unemployed, so I'm having a good time on summer too. So I'm right there with you, Andrea.
Thank you so much for the time. It's been great.
It really is. And I have your number, so
You all have my cell phone number. Ben, if you want my cell phone number, I answer it anytime.
You gave it to me first week.
See, there you go. There you go.
There it is.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? We have one more motion. Someone want to make it?
Ben, I've taken all the seconds. It's all you, buddy.
Motion to adjourn.
Caulfield's second. Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
That's it. We'll see you guys all in a couple weeks.
See you soon.
Yeah.
Well, not all of you. We'll see 3 of you. So.
Take care.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna be crazy. Have a good one, guys.
I'll see you tomorrow, Andrea. Bye.
Goodbye.